And now I'm going to introduce Alex Hamilton. So Alex is a chef extraordinaire here that has been working at the Light Cellar and making his magic. He loves making all kinds of different potion and motion, working with all kinds of different foods. He loves our food system. So he's really passionate about more than ever, like, oh, what happened to our food system and just like how to get it back and get back into our own self. He runs a catering business with his beautiful wife as well. They just work amazing together. He has incorporated many cuisine in his repertoire, and he's interested in rejuvenation, agriculture. Okay, I got a hard time with this word. So sovereignty, community, and incorporate food in the local market and landscape community. So please welcome Alex. Sorry, Alex.
Thank you. Obesity, chronic illness, cancers of all sorts, myriad stomach problems. You know, this is something that we're dealing with now. Does anyone know anybody that has a chronic illness? And if you don't, you know me, so you know somebody. I've suffered with chronic illness probably my whole life. And I didn't really connect food and chronic illness together for a very long time. I started in the restaurant industry at 15 years old. And at that time, I didn't know anything about food. I knew that it was microwavable, Kraft made most of the food, you got it from Costco, and you wrapped it in aluminum foil. You know, that was about the extent of it. But very, very soon into working in a restaurant, I found out about the wide variety of food. You know, I thought that I didn't like asparagus. I thought I didn't like steak. You know, steak night for me was chewing on medium rare blade steak until I could throw it to the dog, you know, like that. And so when the chef came to me and said, "Would you like to have staff meal?" And I'm like, "Oh, what do you got? You know, you got grilled cheese." And I wasn't a very eclectic eater at that time, but he said, "Oh, we have steak," and I was transported back to my jaw. I don't want the workout, but I ate it, and it was amazing. It was actually transformative. I didn't know that food had that capacity, and I fell in love. I'd always been curious in nature, and this talk in the next dozen or so minutes, we're gonna put on our tinfoil hat. I actually put tinfoil hats under all of your seats if you don't have one already. Okay. I'm a product of the X-Files and Rage Against the Machine, and so my distrust for the government has always been very, very broad, and founded now that I've explored food and the systems that it's in. Farmers, we interact with farmers the most out of any profession every day, and very, very often they get put to the side for politicians, celebrities, and sports. You know, and for not good reason either. You know, without farmers, we're doomed. And I'm here to discuss, like, how do we get into this mess? You know, this is like a train wreck, like a type B cluster or a cluster B personality disorder is our food system. You know, narcissistic, very, very taking, gaslighting. You know, I didn't know that. You know, through a series of decisions for myself and, you know, my family. Like I love my mom. She did the best, but, you know, we didn't know a lot about the food that we were putting into our bodies and how deleterious that could be onto our systems. Before I had type 1 diabetes, I had colitis, and I don't know if anybody knows what colitis is, but I'm not going to get into the details. You know, this is a family-friendly event, so. But I did travel to Korea with a severe colitis flare-up, and, you know, because I was always under the mind of I'll just get through, you know. And so when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, the nurse, you know, she smiled at my Sally. You know, I was just like, oh, you know, like this is a life or death thing. Like I'll change my food habits really easily. And she's like, oh, you know, that's it. And so we're gonna rewind it back a little bit. You know, I'm jumping all over the place a little bit. You know, we live in a modern food dystopia, but just underneath is a burgeoning, beautiful food system that just is just out of reach for a lot of people because this is all on purpose. You know, titanium dioxide, nitrates, red food dye number 40, yellow food dye 32, PCP. That's a drug, but you know, citric acid. You know, natural flavors. All of these are ubiquitous on a lot, even organic brands. But a lot of people don't realize that these are actually made with molds, bacterias, and petrochemicals. And it's like, how did we get here? You know, like how did it become that? You know, I'm eating 8 things of grains a day. You know, like I should be losing weight. You know, the food pyramid told me that. And little do we know that the food pyramid was bought. Well, actually, I'm kind of speaking to the choir here, but a lot of people don't realize how pernicious this can be. You know, the allopathic medicine model. You know, like there's going to be a name that I say, and you know, I thought it was just like, oh, this is cool. You know, it means rich. You know, I grew up in '90s hip hop, and you know, Rockefeller meant, you know, oh, you're rich, you're powerful, you're exact, you know, and it's like, oh, I didn't know you're the reason for the ever crumbling society and sovereignty that we face here as a society. But if you can trace back any little thing to it. I mean, when I was listening to all the talks yesterday, all the talks today, I was like, Rockefeller had a hand in that, you know, like, and the receipts are there, you know, even with sound. Like I'm here to talk about food, but if you look up 440 hertz versus 432 hertz, you'll see that Rockefeller Foundation actually did that, and it was one's healing, one isn't. And so allopathic medicine, another one. You can't patent nature, so we're going to take petrochemicals, we're going to wash plants with it, and then we're going to patent it. If anybody has seen any of pop culture and knows the process just by pop culture of how cocaine is made, that's the petrochemical process of how all pharmaceuticals are made. They're washed with a petroleum substrate, and then the precipitate is gathered, pressed into a pill, and then we digest it. I don't know if you're like me, but I don't really want to eat petrochemicals. You know, I think it's for my car, not for me. And raw milk, you know, that was one where I was like, oh wow, you know, like that's a little one. You know, what would people rather be caught with today? A bag of fentanyl or raw milk? But like honestly, you know, like and if you were to pose that question in any society other than the West, people would be like, well, what do you mean? You know, like just milk, you know, because raw milk, just like organic, is a term that's used because the other side of that is the controlled monocropping, you know, food additive laden food system that we interact with, you know. And so I found out Rockefeller, you know. So we have a little inside joke here at the Light Cellar that is almost like a swear jar, where every time that Alex mentions the Rockefellers, we're going to put a little dollar in there. And by the end, okay, we're going to actually have an imaginary one here. And then by the end, I think we'll all be able to buy you some raw milk. Under the radar, though. A lot of this happened through lobbying and education. You know, like one of the greatest things that I heard, and it just made so much sense, was Rockefeller had a letter that was written to him, and it was said to him that the most important resource he can have. This was after he had a monopoly on oil with Standard Oil, and that was broken up. He owned all the subsidiary companies and all that, but we won't get into that. But there was a letter given to him, and it was like, the greatest resource you can hold is the narrative. And so right after that, he went to Harvard University and he put funding into Harvard, Yale, all of the most prestigious ones, and he put it there. So then all of the scientists were, oh, well, I guess raw milk isn't good for you, and I guess petrochemicals are really good for you. I guess injecting neurotoxin is a good thing, and so here we stand today. And we have a slew of misinformation and a slew of just disconnection from our ancestors. But for the mustache twirling supervillain that is Rockefeller, we have a superhero. His name is Weston A. Price. And if you don't know who he is a dentist who lost his son to a root canal that he had performed. And I mean, that would have been like a knife in the heart. But he didn't give up. He wanted to know why are our teeth so bad. And teeth, which I didn't know, I have a lot of missing teeth, are the gateway to our health. And it says everything about our health. And so he went around the world to indigenous places, the indigenous tribes, and he saw that there was something in common. And it was that they were eating naturally made foods. There wasn't red dye 40, there wasn't any of that stuff. It was food the way it was meant to be eaten. And one of the greatest things that he had found is that there's four kingdoms or four areas that we get food from, and if we keep those in balance, we will thrive, and our health is dependent upon it. That is plants, animals, fungi, and bacteria. And if we can keep that together without, I didn't see here petrochemicals or man-made artificial flavors in there, and so if we keep that in mind, we can really, really reclaim our sovereignty. I mean, the convenience and dependence is the currency of the currency of corporations. We've all been a part of it, and I have too. I don't feel like making food, so I go get a burger or whatever, and that is where my talk is going to go. Is that we need to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, with being inconvenienced. We need to start growing things, cooking things. There's a lot of things that we can do, just small things, small acts that will really, really help readjust our relationship with this food system. One of the best things that you can do is go meet a farmer. Has anyone been on a farm before? Has anyone worked on a farm? It's a big thing. I recently took up hunting, and we actually got a deer, and we were about 10 kilometers from the truck. And so we have a 200, 300 pound corpse right here. And it's like, okay, we got to bring this to the truck. Well, the only thing that we could do is put it on our shoulders and take it out. We got it to the truck, and we were frantically calling butchers as we got there, because the prospect of not having a butcher is, well, we had to hang it. We had to butcher it because it was a pretty warm day out, and so the meat was going to spoil if we didn't, and so couldn't find a butcher. So what we had to do is we had to clamp down. I had to come to work actually the next day, and we had to, we were up all night, and it was packing, and by the end I was just like, wow, I am very, I am so grateful for farmers and butchers, but really I had to do that to have an appreciation for it. We can start eating a little bit more locally. We can have potlucks where we make something that we really want. If I want to eat chips, maybe I make the chips first, and see how that goes. Macaroni and cheese is a perfect example. Like I always love that. Kraft dinner, that was my dinner for the longest time. I felt very independent when I was like 12 years old, and I made a box of Kraft dinner, and I put margarine in it, and so. But now I really want to do that because I do think that eating is an agricultural act. It is the end this a beautiful process of synergistic, relationship with the earth. And most times, I did forget to mention that, like through Rockefeller's lobbying and all that, he actually took over a lot of the farming in North America. And so now we see a lot of the proliferation of monocropping, and also abroad. If anybody remembers the Indian farmers protests, that was actually because they were being forced through corporate coercion and bureaucracy. They were being forced to subside with their staple crops that they've been growing for generations and grow corn, wheat, and rice. And that's going on all over the world. Actually, Mexico had just fought with these NGOs and all that to keep heirloom corn on there. And so, farmers it is difficult to start a farm that is regenerative and all that. There are a lot of blocks in there because the corporate malfeasance and the fascia, that is lying. The term fascism, everybody knows that's corporate and government getting together. That's been ubiquitous with our society forever. But we've been told the fairy tale of, oh, we're a democracy, and don't get me started on that. Yeah, that's another class. But the sad truth is that there's a lot of farmers that are being forced by financial reasons or zoning or whatever. They have to grow wheat, genetically modified wheat, with Terminator crop seeds, canola, or mustard. And all of those, like on their own, whatever. But under these models, they are forced into it, and more that they're being extracted. So the best thing that I think we can do is just support these regenerative farms. And they're popping up everywhere because this is the way that we go. They're amazing. I mean, we have many just dotted out just outside of Calgary, just outside of Edmonton, just outside of Red Deer. I think that starting on the right path just takes a single growing something, just growing a herb and putting that in your pasta, and that is the beauty that we can have with this food system. But really, and it's been said before, is learn to read labels, learn to understand that like this hasn't happened by accident, but we can get out of it on purpose. So thank you for your time.